Good morning. Good morning, fellow CHSians, fellow alumni of the College of the Holy Spirit. Good morning, beloved teachers who are here, and sisters of the College of the Holy Spirit. I am absolutely thrilled to be here. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for allowing me to share some thoughts, some experiences from my work. I'm going to beg your forgiveness for actually taking you through some graphs, and let me see if the Holy Spirit still teaches its students how to read graphs and tables. So that's my stock of trade. I'm trained as an economist rather than as an education specialist. However, I have actually applied my skills as an economist to issues related to education. So with that, I really love this title of an article that I wrote with a colleague of mine called The Skills of Tigers. And you probably understand the reference of tigers here because East Asia countries have been referred to as the East Asian tigers. These were the countries that were emerging about 2 decades or so ago. And the idea is that these are fierce economies, growing economies, and now the hottest economies in the region of East Asia. So the messages from my talk are, so let's start with that. Human capital is fundamental to ending poverty and improving the countries, our countries, as well as other countries' prospects for growth. And the challenges that countries face are to ensure that all people have access to learning opportunities, that they promote learning outcomes, that they broaden the types of skills on offer. There are 4 skills that are being offered, that are being supplied by the education system. And lastly, to enhance the demand for skill development. So I'm going to go through 3 slides right here that show where we are. On this slide, what you will see is that these are the averages for different world regions. And I have colored East Asian countries, the yellow one. And the gray line with the numbers refer to the average for the world. And this is from 1999 to 2009. And I have put a star to indicate where the Philippines is. So this is the primary education net enrollment rate. And it's called net because it means the denominator for this rate is the population, a particular population of children who should be in primary education. So you see that even in 1999, and even actually earlier, if I had shown a longer time series, is that the Philippines was doing pretty well. And East Asia as a whole is doing pretty well. What surprised me was actually that the Philippines, which is starred in the graph, is actually lower than the average for East Asia. Because I would have thought that the Philippines was actually one of the countries with a higher primary education net enrollment rate. And here is the net enrollment rate for secondary education. And you see that all countries have a lower enrollment rate at the secondary level, that means the high school level, than the primary level. But it has been rising over time from 1999 to 2009. And again, you see that the Philippines is a bit lower than the average for the entire region. Now this is gross enrollment rate, meaning to say it doesn't refer to any particular age of the population, so there's no so the denominator is not specific to the age group that's supposed to be in tertiary education. This means university and college, and that's because you have a much bigger age range for those who are in college or university. But what you see here is for all regions, tertiary education enrollment has been rising rapidly. And what is again surprising here, but going the other way, is that the Philippines actually does very, very well relative to the other countries in the region with respect to enrollment rate at tertiary level. And what this means is that those students who manage to graduate from high school, then a bigger proportion of them actually continue on to college, showing in many cases the dedication of their families to continue their education. But the question is, if we're going to think about economic development or development as a whole, the real question is not only about the average years of schooling or the enrollment rates, it is really about whether students are learning when they go to school. Are students learning? And how much are they learning? So I'm going to show you here a graph from the, this is the International Student Assessment Test done in Paris, or at least managed in Paris, at the OECD. And this test actually began mainly for rich countries. But over time, more and more developing countries have come on board. And in fact, the latest entrant into this is Vietnam. So what you see here are average scores from 400 and below. I didn't show the countries that were doing worse, all the way up to 580. And again, there are a couple of countries up there that are not here. But Vietnam is a surprise. Vietnam has done much better, as you see from here, better than Australia, better than Austria, better than the United Kingdom, better than Norway. In fact, slightly better than the average for the richest country. And I think this is a puzzle for us to think about, and hopefully an inspiration as well. These are average performance of 15-year-olds in mathematics. 500 is kind of the it's like a benchmark, so that's why I drew a line across there. But young people are leaving school without basic cognitive skills, and all kinds of data that are comparable actually show this, and I wanted to show you where the Philippines lies. So I've compared several East Asian countries, and the Philippines is the rightmost, rather than your leftmost. And the longest bar refers to the proportion of 14-year-olds who are enrolled in grade 8. The lower blue bar refers to the proportion enrolled and know how to do basic math. And the lowest, at least for the Philippines, and the lowest bar pertains to the proportion of students who are enrolled in grade 8 and can apply basic math. So a difference between knowing and actually being able to apply. And I put a yellow bracket there to show you the gap between the proportion of 14-year-olds who are enrolled in grade 8 and those who've actually learned math. So that's a huge gap, and you see that it's a bigger gap for the Philippines than it is for the other countries who are our neighbors. Again, back to the PISA scores. This just shows, for example, that there is a positive association between GDP per capita, income per capita of countries, and the PISA test scores. So you see this positive association. Why is that? Well, richer countries are able to spend more for education. Richer countries also have a greater demand for skilled labor. So you see this positive relationship. But why is it that you have a spread? You see the dots, those are different countries. It means to say that is not a perfect association. And in fact, again, over the leftmost, I've noted Vietnam, which has among the lowest GDP per capita, but a much higher student assessment scores than even countries with much higher income per capita. So GDP per capita explains student assessment scores, but not perfectly. Again, this is just a way of clustering together the countries by regions of the world. But how does education contribute to a country's development? And why are we interested in discussing this today? So first, a country's development isn't all about income per capita. It's not all about economic progress or growth prospects. It is also about the quality of its people, the quality of life. True, it's about the skills and creativity of its workers, but it's also the capability of its leaders to govern, and to govern well, and to manage, to be good stewards of natural resources. And the third, it's also about the ability of the adult population to raise healthy, educated, and happy children. So we want to be a better, more developed country because we want to ensure that we have a next generation that is healthy, satisfied with their lives, and so forth. Now, here are some findings from research about the relationship between skills and creativity of workers to indicators of development. One is that one additional year of, and in particular education, so one additional year of schooling increases an individual's wage, on average, by 5 to 10%. And then on this last one, half the reduction in child mortality over the past 40 years, looking at all countries in the world, can be attributed to better education of women. I'm sure that can be a bit of a subject for discussion over lunch at your tables. And one additional year in average education of women reduces child deaths by 9.5%. Again, very related to the mission of the Fellowship of the Holy Spirit over the past 100 years, in fact. So how does education contribute to a country's economic prospects, which is the focus of my talk? So what is that? These Asian firms report that finding skilled workers is considered by employers as an obstacle. And you see here how the Philippines stacks up against the neighboring countries. And the light blue bar says that employers find that skilled workers is a moderate or major, very severe obstacle for them. So less in the Philippines than in China, but more in the Philippines than in Korea or Cambodia. Philippine employers also have difficulty finding workers with more skills. So let's start getting down to a bit of detail here. So these are percentages of employers who say that they find it very difficult to find skills. So the blue bars refer to the manufacturing sector. The pink or purple bars refer to the service sector. And what you see here is that relative to the manufacturing sector, the service sector find that it's harder for them to find good directors and good managers. They don't find it hard at all to find unskilled workers or even workers for skilled production. It's really a much bigger difficulty with respect to professionals, with respect to directors and managers. And the reasons for skill shortages, that varies across sectors. And here, in some cases, it's because of high job turnover, because of pay, and because of emigration outside the Philippines. And that these are more important reasons in manufacturing than in the service sector. On the other hand, quality and the quantity of skills are more important in the service sector than in manufacturing. So here are some skill gaps in new hires. And what we're finding is that skills in time management, skills related to taking initiatives and problem solving, these are much bigger with respect to the gaps in core skills of managers. And for production and sales workers, the gaps in core skills pertain to problem solving, pertains to taking initiatives and leadership and so forth. So you see, if gaps in the Philippines, it depends on whether you're taking this from the point of view of managers or the point of view of sales and production workers. Skill requirements for new hires. Philippine employers rank highly the ability to work independently and the ability to communicate well and to problem solve. Those are what they say are the key core skills that they would like to see in their new hires. For managers, it will be problem solving, leadership, communication. For production and sales workers, they would like to see a higher capacity for independent work, more teamwork skills. Communication is also important, and time management. So these are the core skills. And now I will go to key job-specific skills for managers and for production and sales worker. And what you see here is that employers find that the most important job-specific skill that they would like to see in new hires is practical knowledge. It's not only about theory, it's also about being able to apply that theory to real-life situations. So these are, by the way, data from enterprise surveys for different years conducted in the Philippines. So if you ask the alumni who are here today how they've seen the workforce change or even the labor market change, they will tell you that there have been remarkable changes. We went to university when there were no laptops. We went to no mobile phone either. And the appearance of the information and communication technology revolution has really changed the character of work. It has changed the character of life. And we, all of us here on this auditorium, are witnesses to these major shifts in the way we work and in the way we live, the way we communicate with each other, the way we relate to each other. And so is the case with the skill characteristics of jobs in the labor market. And what I do in this table is to really categorize types of skills demanded by jobs. So what this matrix indicates is that you can have jobs that require more routine manual skills. And what are these? These are related to working at pace determined by speed of equipment, making repetitive motions. Then there are jobs that really require more non-routine manual skills, and those are the jobs that involve operating vehicles, mechanized devices, using hands to handle, control, etc., and having spatial orientation. These are for jobs that require manual dexterity. And then there are jobs that require routine cognitive skills, and these are jobs that require repeating the same tasks, being exact or accurate, having structured work. And so here you can begin to see where math might be useful. Then there are these jobs that require non-routine cognitive skills, and under cognitive skills would be analytical skills. So these jobs involve analyzing information or data. It involves thinking creatively and interpreting information. And then under cognitive skills, there's also the interpersonal skills, because that's also about involving the mind and involving cognitive skills more generally. So establishing and maintaining personal relationships is very important for these kinds of jobs. Guiding, directing, motivating subordinates, and coaching and mentoring. So 4 types of jobs or skills in jobs as a whole. And I'm showing this graph to tell you that in the United States, so this is a research not my own, but researchers, professors at Harvard University, who looked at the proportion of employment by type of skills in the United States and how that has changed over 40 years, 1960 to 2002. And what you see here really is a decline in the demand for skills of non-routine manual skills, and an increase in the kinds of jobs that require non-routine analytical skills. So that's what I'm saying, is that in our lifetimes, we see a big shift in the kinds of jobs, the kinds of skills that are required by jobs in the labor market. And we, the education system and the College of the Holy Spirit, have to be prepared to equip students for these kinds of shifts. What do these tables, all of these graphs mean for the Philippines' growth prospects and economic development? So I go back to my analogy of tigers. So looking at 2014 this year and beyond, can the Philippines go from being a tiger cub to an adult tiger? What do we know from the history, economic history of East Asian countries? Again, one, human capital has been fundamental to explaining growth of East Asian countries, and it's going to be the case for the Philippines. Two, emerging countries have been challenged in sustaining growth by their demographics and their need to improve productivity, and it's going to be the same in the Philippines. We will be challenged by growing population, because remember, all of these things, labor market and the ability to grow jobs, the ability to fund better education will depend on population, and it will we need to be cognizant of that, and we also need to think about how to improve productivity better. And meeting these challenges will require, from other countries as well as from the Philippines, one, to ensure that there's a supply of relevant knowledge and cognitive, socio-emotional, and job-specific skills like those I talked about. It will require from the countries the ability to enhance the demand for schooling among excluded groups. In the last PISA tables, the last PISA tests around the world, 2012, Peru was an amazing country because even though it stayed at the bottom of the tables, it actually experienced the largest increase in test scores of students. And it didn't do that by improving the test scores of the elites, of the richer, more capable students. It did that by lifting the test scores of the disadvantaged groups. It is by lifting the boat that holds the poorest parts of the population. And we are going to have to do the same in the Philippines if we want our labor force to be more appealing, better able to actually do what it takes for the country to grow. And lastly, and I know that our next speaker is going to talk about this, we need to confront the issues that face our higher education system. What we see here is that our GDP per capita lags behind that of other countries. And I will just point to the Philippines. Again, this is the Philippines right there. And the bars, 1990 is the left bar, 2010 is the right bar for GDP per capita, or per person employed. And so what you see here is that the Philippines isn't doing well in terms of income per capita and relative to countries like Indonesia, like China, like Thailand. Well, we know about China's amazing growth over the past decades, but Indonesia and Thailand and Malaysia, we are behind in terms of GDP per capita. So one of the last things I wanted to share with you is one, how Korea, which is has a much admired education system. It has its faults, and I can tell you a little bit about its faults. But in terms of performance, Korea's education system has really been very productive. And what this figure shows is that as Korea transformed itself from the post-war period, the post-war reconstruction period, that's the leftmost bar, to the current knowledge economy of Korea, you can see that also its net secondary enrollment has been increasing as well as its gross tertiary enrollment. Again, showing you that there is a relationship here between economic development and also what's happening and the performance of the education system. Last graph for Korea. If we were to decompose the reasons for how Korea was able to achieve what it has achieved, you know, with Samsung and Hyundai and all that, plus other things that are markers right now of the Korean economy. What we see is that the difference, and here I compare that with Mexico, but here, if it were just increases in the inputs of production of labor and capital, Korea's growth would only be this blue line. But because Korea has also been investing in the knowledge of its workers, that knowledge accumulation and skills accumulation has meant that this red line is Korea's growth. Okay. So if all that Korea did was to increase its labor force in terms of numbers and also invested physical capital, it would only have been growing this much over the period 1960 to year 2000. Instead, because of the performance of its education system, the real growth in per capita income of South Korea has been this red line, a spectacular increase, and due to increased productivity because of the performance of its education system. The Philippines is looking at a wage skill premium. And I know this is a difficult job, so I'm going to go to difficult graphs. I'm going to go to this graph. The wage premium for higher education. What this tells us is how much individuals as a whole would get if they had a university education, rather than just stopping at secondary, at high school. The fact that the Philippines is higher than Thailand means to say that in fact, our economy can use more young people who go on to a university and finish university or college. So this is the wage premium. This means what you would get if you actually did finish your university or college degree. So it's not as promising as in Indonesia, and that could be because in Indonesia they have fewer, remember we have a lot more young people who go to college. Indonesia has fewer, and so that's why the premium of college education is higher than that. But for us, it's much higher than in Thailand. And so I will end with these quotes. I will start with a quote from the former president of South Korea, who said, "Education is the only means to sever the vicious cycle of poverty. The best welfare is to dole out opportunities for education and jobs. My only wish," he said, "is to encourage those who have difficulties in educating their children and help the educated children land a job." Now, I didn't watch the State of the Union address of President Obama. I think that was last night. But this is what he said in 2010. "When it comes to jobs, opportunity, and prosperity in the 21st century, nothing is more important than the quality of our education." Well, by our, he means the United States. At a time when most of the new jobs being created will require some kind of higher education, when countries that out-educate us today will out-compete us tomorrow, giving our kids the best education possible is an economic imperative. And then I love this quote from Mahatma Gandhi. "Live as if you were to die tomorrow. Learn as if you were to live forever." And I love that because what it says is that in fact, when we do well in school, when we invest in education, which is actually one of the, I would say, from my point of view, the strongest driver for development as a whole. When we invest in education, it means to say we are investing in lifelong, continuous learning. We continuously learn throughout our lives. And we also invest for our next generation. So with that, I bid you mabuhay. Thank you.